Welcome to Lutherans Alive. We're glad you're with us. This is the program that seeks to tell the stories of Lutheran Christians and our ministries here in Southwestern Pennsylvania. And we do so joyfully, believing that God is at work in us. I'm Pastor Tony Schneck, pleased to be your host on the program. And today with us is Pastor Reinhold Weber. But no, I have never heard anybody refer to you as Pastor Reinhold Weber. Usually it's just Dutch. And Pastor Dutch Weber is with us on the program today. He is a member of the Seaman Memorial Lutheran Congregation on the campus of the Lutheran Passivant Retirement Community in Zelienople, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Dutch, to the program today.
Delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thanks for being here. And if you would begin, please, just by sharing a bit of your own story. You've traveled quite a bit in your life, and indeed we're not born here in North America, but you were born elsewhere. Can you start there?
Yes, my father was a Lutheran pastor in Transylvania, which is in Romania, and came to this country in 1925 in order to become a pastor among Saxon people here in Pennsylvania. And because of his desire to better himself, because Romania was in very bad shape at that time economically, and the call came from Pennsylvania for the Synod to have pastors come and speak in the language of the people. Well, he spoke 5 languages, so it was important that he be able to come over here and do it. So we came in 1926. My mother, my 2 brothers, and I came across. One of the unusual things about it was that during the trip, my mother was completely seasick. So the 3 boys of us had the run of the ship, and we never let my mother forget that, because she did us a favor by getting sick, and that wasn't very nice. But it was we came to America, saw the Statue of Liberty for the first time, went through Ellis Island and all that embodied. In fact, my brother and I have our names on the wall that's there yet, and we're very proud to be here in America. When we came over, I was 5.5 years old, and perhaps you'd like to hear the story of why I'm called Dutch. About the second week that we were here, I was standing outside my father's church in Steelton, Pennsylvania, near Harrisburg, and standing there and looking around, and suddenly this boy came along with a cowboy suit and 2 guns holstered, and he put the guns up against me, and he said, "You're Dutch." And I said, "Nein, nicht Holland. I'm not from Holland." And he didn't understand that, but he went around and told all the kids that I'm a Dutchman, and it stuck for all these 90 years. That's how I got the name, at any rate. But then my father had the church there. He preached in 5 different languages because of Bethlehem Steel Company was there, and the immigrants who came in went and worked at the Bethlehem Steel Company, but they couldn't understand English, so they weren't going to church. And that's one of the reasons why my father was called, along with 200 other pastors. And when we came across in 1926, there were also about 100 preachers' wives who came along. So it was quite a group of us on that ship. At any rate, when I went to school, then this might be interesting, I couldn't speak anything. I couldn't even speak German. I spoke Saxon, which was our basic language. And I got in the seat, and the teacher said to everybody, "Take your sweaters off. It's warm in here." Now, I didn't hear that and didn't know it. But my mother had said in German, which is very important, when it's in German, it's official, "Don't take your sweater off." Well, when she said that, I put my hands on my sweater and I just watched everybody, And it was kind of interesting because that teacher came over and she thought I was being smart. She put my hands on the desk and hit me with the edge of a ruler. The funny thing is, she became my most favorite teacher. My father came then and explained what was happening, and she just became so loving and kind to this little immigrant boy. But that was my first impression was, we're going back to Romania. But, at any rate, that we started there, and my schooling was in Steelton. And then from that point, of course, I went my father was called to Philadelphia then, to a new parish, and I went to college at Widener College in Staten Island, New York, and that's where I met my wife. She became my girlfriend the first year, and then after that, again, I was trying to impress her quite a bit, and we were walking down a walk, and I had been there 2 weeks ahead of time as a counselor to the freshmen. And 3 girls came up with their dinkies on, and so Lois said to me, why don't you introduce me? Oh, now I was in trouble. And I could remember 2 of the girls, but I couldn't remember the third one. Her last name was Weber. So she let me know that for the 67 years of our marriage, she always would hit me like this and say, Ursula. Her name was Ursula Weber. And it was just so funny. That's been part of the humor of our marriage. It's just a great thing. So then after we were married upon graduation, and I went into the service. I was in the Army, in a chaplain's office, worked there, and both here and overseas. I was at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and then went to San Francisco, and from there to the Philippines, except it took us 31 days to get to the Philippines, which was unusual. We had 2,500 troops, and in the meantime, there were the submarines from Japan. We're all over the Pacific, and so we were back and forth. That's when I became a pollywog, for instance. You know what a pollywog is? You have no idea? No. Pollywog is one who goes over the equator line. When you go over that, you have to go through a ceremony. And I became a pollywog. You have to drink this crazy stuff and do all kinds of strange things, and we had a lot of fun with it. But that's where I am at this time, and in terms of my life. Do you want me to continue?
We would love to hear more. Thanks so much for what you've shared so far about your story and all the miles that you've traveled and the years that you've lived. And we're going to have more with Pastor Dutch Weber here on Lutherans Alive after a short break.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Lutherans Alive. We're here today speaking with Pastor Dutch Weber, retired pastor from our synod, sharing a bit about his journey all the way from Romania and then to this country, and then serving our country in the Army during the Second World War. I think that's where we left off. And you said you had served in the chaplain's office.
I was in the chaplain's office. We got to the Philippines finally, and it was interesting because we went through a tsunami there, which was very interesting because it carried the LSTs right into the shore, about 600 feet. That's a tremendous power. Anyway, we had, what was interesting was in August of '45, when the end of the war came and the atomic bomb had been dropped, we called for a chapel service of Thanksgiving. 25 showed up out of a huge group. Most of them were celebrating, and we let that go by only one day, and then we called another one, and then everybody came. But you couldn't blame them because it was such a traumatic time, and to be able to know that the war was over, although some of the Japanese soldiers on Cebu, which was an island nearby, I was on Leyte, they didn't know that yet, and they kept on fighting for a couple days after the war was declared over. But one of the interesting things was when the war was over, we were assigned with the 1st Cavalry Division to Tokyo, to a place called Zama, which is the west point of Japan. And on the way over, I met, of all things, a chaplain from Philadelphia Seminary. And he called me up to the quarterdeck, and he said, "I want to show you something." He said, "If the atomic bomb had not been dropped, this is what would have happened to the plains of Tokyo." And he showed me a map, and it would have been completely pulverized. Of course, there would have been additional people killed and so forth. So we can be grateful for that, sad about the means of doing it, but sometimes this is what happens. And our Christian religion is very much the same. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way we want, but there's a reason behind it, and I think I found it there anyway. And it was just interesting. When we got to Japan, I had wonderful opportunities to witness for Christ, because there, as you know, 1/2 of 1% of the population is Christian. Aside from visiting the seminary, which is in Tokyo, we were visiting individual families. I got acquainted with the manager of the Mitsukoshi department store, who was not a Christian, but spoke beautiful British English because he was born in Manchuria. And I was able to witness to him about Christ. And when we left, we were there about a year, when we left, he said, "Would you get me a Bible?" And that was just wonderful. Something had happened. I can't take any credit for it except that the Holy Spirit was working. And then after that, when I went in my first parish, I received a letter from him. He had accepted Jesus Christ, he and his family. All because why? I turned around and gave him a piece of my chocolate from my sea rations. And he hadn't had chocolate for 4 years. He says, "You're going to be my friend." Now, how the Holy Spirit works, and then this was on the street of the Ginza in Tokyo. That's where it happened. To imagine that something like that happened, so personal. And I had a wonderful opportunity, and he asked me to come back to the store one day. He had gifts there for Lois, a kimono, a tea set, and a pearl necklace. He said, "I want you to have this because you gave me that chocolate." Chocolate for all of that?
Oh, wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And anyway, then he said, "Would you like to play the organ?" I said, "Well, I fiddle around once in a while. I don't play it very well." He says, "Well, come on, let's go up there." We went to the 5th floor. The 2nd largest organ in the world is in the Mitsukoshi department store. Wanamakers had the biggest one. This was the 2nd largest one. And he said, "Would you play?" And I said, "Oh, I can fool around, but I thought I was playing for him." Anyway, I played for about 15 minutes, just kind of playing different tunes, and then he said, "That's fine." I didn't know what he was talking about. A week later, he sent me a record, records, the old records, 45. He sent it to me. He said, "You were over JOAK, for 15 minutes. And I was just completely surprised. I couldn't believe it. I said, "I'm not an organist." He said, "Well, it worked out okay." He didn't give me too much of a, but anyway, wasn't that unusual though?
And you didn't even know. And you didn't even
I had no idea until I got the record.
Oh my.
That they made a record of it and played it over JOAK, which is the national I was on that and didn't know it. I mean, it was amazing. But the Lord works in strange and mysterious ways.
And one act of kindness.
I had an opportunity, by the way, to climb Mount Fuji, which was 12,348 feet high. That was interesting. What surprised me was when we got to the top. Now remember, there are hundreds and thousands of people who worship Mount Fuji. That's a god. And during the night, when we went from Saturday into Sunday morning, my friend and I stopped along the way, and we took our hymnals, our Army hymnals out, and we had a service there looking at the Sea of Japan below us. We were at about probably 7,000 feet by that time. And we saw all these other people walking along, singing their song because they were going up to a god. Well, we got up to the top. It took us about 11 hours. We got to the top, and you know what we found up there? All kinds of stores selling all kinds of things about the god that they were there. I was so surprised. Commercialism is everywhere. Can't get away from it. But we were up there then for several hours, and then we ran down. It took us 2 hours to run down through the silt and all the stuff down back to our Jeep, which was at about 2,000 feet. That was interesting. And then, aside from that, I got to Kamakura, where the big Buddha is. It's a 40-foot high Buddha. And we were able to climb in to that Buddha and go to the top where the big eyes are, to look down, to watch the people giving their yen and sen and praying to a Buddha which has nothing. The man who let me in was the only Christian in Kamakura. We had dinner with them. He was the caretaker of the park, and he said, "Would you like to see something very important for your life?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So he opened the door, we went in, went up these stairs to the top. And then after he gave me the greatest story in the world, he said, "Just imagine, we have a God who came in flesh. Here is a Buddha who is empty." And it was a sermon in a few words. And he was a great witness for Christ, and had quite a few problems because of it. So that was interesting in that part of my story.
What an amazing journey you have had, Dutch.
Oh, so far. Oh.
And thanks so much for what you've shared so far, from witnessing with just a small act of kindness, and how that opened up doors for you, and it's wonderful. More with Pastor Dutch Weber after we take another break here on Lutherans Alive.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Lutherans Alive. We continue to hear wonderful stories from Pastor Dutch Weber, not only about his service to the Lord, but also his service to our country in Asia back in World War II. And then when it was time to leave there, you had opportunities to witness to folks while you were there working through the chaplain's office. And you were in Japan at the end of the war, and then you got to come home, and you have some things to share about your journey homeward.
Well, in the first place, I took up photography, which was a wonderful thing to know and to do. We did about 2,000 or 3,000 prints a night for the guys as they went back home. And suddenly I got this call, "You can go home this weekend. There are 5 other fellows who are going, and one of them is the aide-de-camp to General MacArthur." And I said, "Boy, I've got to take this." I had my points, so we got on the ship, and it was a UNRRA ship, which means that they sent relief articles to Japan, and then we went back on an empty ship. In the first place, an empty ship bounces. And so I had one day of, I would say, discomfort. But after that, it was okay, and we ate with the crew, and again, we were able to witness quite a bit. That was a good opportunity. But we heard so many stories about General MacArthur. As you remember, President Truman and General MacArthur didn't really get along too well. Mm-hmm. And I found out some stories about that. We don't need to share those now, but the fact that General MacArthur was a great general, a great tactician. And we saw him one day. We were at the Emperor's Palace, and he came out of the Daiichi building, which was the main headquarters of the army. And as he came out of the door with his retinue, a man from a crowd out here rushed up and kissed his boots. And General MacArthur just kind of got him up in there. And I thought to myself, got to watch this. We're not gods. We're here to help the Japanese people. And incidentally, the Japanese people themselves were glad the war was over. They were glad. We got that witness. But anyway, we got back on the ship, and then one day one of the fellows said, "You want to run the ship?" And I said, "Well, I've never run a ship at all. What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what. We'll put a big towel around your head, make you look like a pirate. You can stand up there at the wheel." So they took a picture of that, and I think I still have it. I have so many pictures. There I am standing. Well, of course they had it locked in, nothing I was doing, but I was standing there like a pirate. It was just the most wonderful thing. But our eating with the crew gave an opportunity to witness for Christ. We had prayer, and a couple of guys, it looked like, what's this about? And we got to be very friendly with them on the trip back to San Francisco. And then from San Francisco, then went back, united with my wife, and I was, we started our 67 years of marriage together, separated for 2 years. That was kind of interesting. But anyway, I went to seminary when Dr. Ho was the president there at that time, and then I got my first call to Indiana, Pennsylvania, to the Grove Chapel Parish. And there were 6 churches at that time: Grove Chapel, Harmony Grove, Antioch, Bethel, Cookport, and Sagamore. I don't know if those names mean anything to you, but I had 4 services a Sunday, starting at 8:30 in the morning, and then 11, 2 in the afternoon, and 7 in the evening. And then we interchanged churches. And do you know Pastor Power, Don Power? Do you know that name?
The name is familiar.
Well, he and I became real buddies because he was assigned then to take 3 churches away from me. I thought I was in heaven because now I was down to 3 churches only. Wow. So anyway, at any rate, that went on for the 6 years that I was there in the Grove Chapel Parish. Wonderful people. We built a new church at Harmony Grove. That was quite a deal because President Hankey was the president of the Synod. They call it presidents then, not bishop. But anyway, Bill Hankey came to the cornerstone laying of the church in Harmony Grove. And if you know Harmony Grove, it's way out in the country, in the boondocks, but wonderful people. And we had a program called There's Gold in Them There Hills, an evangelism program. We got 19 members for the Presbyterian Church down the road and 8 members for us. They never could get over that. But, it came out at the cornerstone laying, and by the way, we had over 600 people at the cornerstone laying of this small church. Over 600 people. And they gave us a check for $1,000. That was like $1,000 back in the, in the 40s was really something. And they said, because you witness for Christ instead of for the church. Isn't that something? It's a sermon in itself. And we always remember that. There's golden in their hills. I think I always remember that as starting off my ministry in a wonderful, powerful way, and made a difference in my ministry too. And I have stories about how my preaching got better. It was good, but we're finished.
We'll have to save that for another time. We would love to have you back on the program, Dutch, and you could share more about life in parish ministry for how many years now, did you say? 61?
61 years of actual ministry. I retired 2 different times. So I retired in 88 and then once again in 07. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, we would love to hear more. And we'll have to have you back on the program here on Lutherans Alive. Thanks so much for being here.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Right. And thank you for being with us here today on Lutherans Alive. We know that from wherever you're watching, there is a Lutheran congregation in or near your community that would be pleased to welcome you and witness to you. And we hope that you'll come and worship with us, and we hope that you'll come and see us next time on Lutherans Alive.